Hey everyone, it's Melody with Design by Melody here, and I have a scrapbook design topic for you today. I'm going to start labeling these, numbering them, so it's easy to go back and look at these later if anybody would like to use them for reference. Plus it also kind of keeps me track of helps me keep track of what I've discussed and talked about. So today's topic is going to be about scrapbooking for others. So I wrote out a couple of tips here just to kind of keep myself organized. It is fun to scrapbook for other people, but it can also be quite a bit challenging. It is a bit difficult once you get into it, that I have found, and this is from me speaking from experience. I have now scrapbooked for two people, both of my sisters, and I have found that whenever I am scrapbooking for someone else, I tend to think things through a little bit more than I do when I'm scrapbooking for myself. When I'm scrapbooking for myself, I just go with what my gut feels right, what my heart thinks looks good, what I just feel like putting on there. Well, when I'm scrapbooking for somebody else, for some reason, I can't get over the thought process. I think about it a little too much, and I think that makes it difficult. So I've written out a few tips for you guys just to kind of help you if you choose to scrapbook for someone else, whether it's they've asked you to, or it's a gift for someone, or it's just something you want to do. Either way, these are a couple tips. My first tip is pre-plan your photos. Now, what I have done is I am scrapbooking for both of my sisters. I've already given one, the older sister, her Christmas gift, which was some scrapbook pages. There were 15 scrapbook pages to kind of start her album for her son, who is 3. Yes, he's 3. He'll be 4 in May. And then she's also pregnant right now with her other child. So I wanted to get her started on her album before she had another child and then didn't have any pages for either one of them. So what I did is pre-plan my photos. Now, it doesn't have to be real thought out, but it's more so make sure if you're going to make 20 pages for somebody and it's about their child, make sure you don't have 5 photos from 1 month, and then it's like my nephew's 3. I had to make sure that the photos I printed and planned out to do pages spread across his 3-year period of being here with us. So I didn't want to have 15 well, I did 15 layouts. I didn't want to have 12 from, his first 2 months and then only 2 from later on. I wanted to make sure it was well spread out. That way, if they're flipping through the album, there's a pretty nice progression, recording his growth in his life thus far. You can do a couple things or use a couple things that are available to us now in this day and age to be able to find those photos. Facebook was a huge help. I use my relatives, but also friends of my sister. She'd been to a couple weddings, and there were pictures of them at those weddings that I pulled. I asked them, if it's somebody who you're just scrapbooking for and it's not a surprise gift, you could ask them what they want in it. Having them provide photos is a big thing. This other sister, my younger sister, she already knows about her gift because she, of course, saw the older sister's Christmas gift. But so I asked her what she wanted in it, and she actually suggested using the month photos that she takes of her son. Now, her son is only about 6 months old now, so he's still relatively young, but she takes a photo every month, and so we're going to make it in an album where it has one for each month of his first year. So anyways, pre-plan your photos, number 1. Number 2, set titles for those photos. I had the hardest time coming up with titles for these layouts because they're not my own layouts, so I don't necessarily know the stories. So coming up with the titles was the next challenge that I faced. So doing that up front just makes it easy. Like I have this picture of my nephew, Finn, and he has this thing with his tongue. He always sticks his tongue out. Always. Like 90% of the photos he has his tongue sticking out. So that's kind of what this layout's going to be about. This is a newborn photo of him. I believe they were still in the hospital. But it's going to be about this whole issue with his tongue, how he always has it sticking out of his mouth. So that's what that layout's going to be about. So creating titles, plan those titles. It's easiest for me that I have found to plan those titles as I print my photos. So that's the hardest part of the scrapbooking process for me when I'm scrapbooking for somebody else. And so doing that from the get-go just makes it that much easier. Number 3, keep the recipient's taste in mind when embellishing. I like to embellish, but I am a little bit conservative sometimes compared to others when it comes to embellishment. And I believe, based on my older sister's scrapbook style that I've seen in the past, she hasn't scrapbooked in a couple years, but from what I remember, her style was a little bit more on the conservative side as far as embellishing. So keep your recipient's taste in mind when you're embellishing. If you have someone that likes more traditional, vintagey type of things, keep that in mind. You don't want to give them a whole bunch of scrapbook layouts with neon colors on it. It's just not going to match their taste. So keep that in mind. Number 4, journaling. Leave a space to journal that is hidden in case the recipient does not want to end up journaling. So I've done a lot of hidden journaling pockets or tags that can be pulled out that journaling can be written on, but you never know if your recipient never gets around to actually journaling or they don't know what to put on it. You don't want to make the page look awkward with these 10 lines sitting there with nothing written on them. So keep that in mind as well. Have journaling, space to journal, because that is somewhat the point of scrapbooking, but keep it hidden just in case the person doesn't actually get around to journaling or they don't feel like journaling. And number 5, excuse me. And number 5, have fun. Don't overcomplicate it. That is the biggest thing. That is my biggest tip to you all. Do not overcomplicate this because it can get quite complicated if you overthink it. So just have fun and don't overthink it. So those are my 5 tips for you. Pre-plan your photos. Pre-plan your titles. Keep the recipient's taste in mind. Keep journaling. Make sure there's a spot for journaling, but keep it hidden. And number 5, have fun and don't overcomplicate it. So one last thing that I did not actually add on here, but one thing that can help is creating a stash kit or buying supplies to make a kit. That way you have all your supplies in one spot. That's just a good tip for scrapbooking in general if you have a really large stash that's hard to go through, or if you don't have a lot and you want to create a kit that's kind of all-encompassing so you don't have to, constantly look for something to add to your layout. But anyways, let's get right into it. This is a layout that I am making for my younger sister with this photo of my nephew and his funny tongue here. So anyways, thank you and stay tuned. As I mentioned, this is a layout I'm doing for my younger sister of my nephew Finn, and this picture is such an awesome picture of him. He's got this thing with his tongue, and he always has his tongue out. I swear, it never fails. If you find a picture of him or if you see him, his tongue is out, and it's just so funny. So I had to, as soon as I saw this picture, I knew I had to scrapbook it, because even if she doesn't tell the story about it in the journaling, we will always know the story about him and his tongue, where he just always has it sticking out of his mouth. And it doesn't just like hang out of his mouth, he just constantly sticks it out. It's just so funny. So I start with this polka dot background paper, and I decide pretty quickly that to cut down my photo and mat it on this 4x6 journaling card. And this is from the Chickaninny Crafts Date Night collection, and I'm pulling a couple different items from that same collection to use on this layout. Now I am going to name this layout Hello Darling, and part of that reason is because I am using the We Are Memory Keepers die cuts here that you see to the left of the screen, and those are called or from the Hello Darling collection. And as soon as I decided to pull those out, I knew exactly what I wanted to name this layout. And that is part of that one tip that I mentioned at the beginning, which was pre-plan what photos you're going to scrapbook, and also title those photos before you even start scrapbooking. It just makes the process a little bit easier. If I get hung up on something like a title in the middle of my scrapbooking, it totally throws me off. So to have that title already established is extremely helpful whenever you're scrapbooking for someone else. I just find it difficult to create titles for layouts that aren't mine. So Hello Darling is the title that I chose for this layout. Now I pretty quickly also decide that the polka dot paper is a little too busy to use as a background. So instead I use it as part of my photo mat, and then I switch to using this white cardstock as my background. Now, if it had been my own layout, I may have stuck with the polka dot paper because I really don't mind busy layouts. However, since this is for my sister and I'm not 100% what her scrapbooking style is, I decided to go ahead and switch to a solid white cardstock as my background. It makes it a little bit more neutral and just a little bit not quite so busy. Now this Hello Darling, these die cuts that I have over here off to the side were pretty inspiring to me. I like the teal. It's kind of got a darker teal and a lighter teal. And then also some pinks and lime greens. I'm sorry, purples and lime greens and white and gray. And so I'm kind of using that as my inspiration for this entire layout, not only just for the title, but also for the color scheme. And you can see that in that darker teal, darker kind of green ribbon that I pulled out. And that's from American Crafts. That's from their premium ribbon sets that you can purchase. I see them all the time at what do you call those? Tuesday Morning and TJ Maxx. They have those a lot of times in their scrapbooking section. And those are really nice to use. I have had, I think, 3 different sets of those of different styles, and I use the ribbon all the time. It's enough to be able to get some use out of it, but not so much that you get tired of seeing that ribbon. And it's a really nice quality as well. It's a little bit larger than 1/4 of an inch wide, but it's not as wide as a 1/2 inch, I don't believe. So I backed that frame, and that's where I'm actually going to put excuse me, that's actually where I'm going to put my title. And so I'm just kind of flipping through the different little pieces here, and this is that Chickanitty Crafts Date Night collection. I'm mixing the 2 collections, and I had this frame and I wanted to use it. I wanted to somehow use photo corners, but I did not have 4 of those little clamshell photo corners that you saw, and so I decided to take this frame and make my own photo corners. So I just trimmed out the corners and then made a diagonal cut across the parts that are actually going to be on the edge. And I do this quite frequently where I build my photo cluster before I even adhere it down to the page. And I think it just helps me be able to move things around. I am never completely 100% sure what I'm doing whenever I start a layout, even if I plan, which I do plan sometimes. So even if I do a decent amount of planning, I am never 100% sure exactly how I want it to turn out. So I like being able to move things. And I typically use my roller adhesive, that Elmer's glue one that's right there. That's kind of my adhesive that I've been using a lot here frequently. I'm sorry, recently. And even with that, once you put it down, you could still move it around. And the Tombow Mono multi-glue, which you see in the very top of my screen here, that's another glue that you can still move around whenever you start using it. So I like being able to have that possibility or option to move things around. That's just how I prefer to scrapbook. Now I am putting my title right here on this little label that I made. As I mentioned, I used a frame, a piece of a 3x4 card, and then I also layered a tag right behind that. Now my tag wasn't wide enough to fit across it, so I went ahead and just cut it across the middle and then layered it around the sides. Now I'm using these alpha stickers here, and they were not sticky enough, and some of the backs came off of a few of them, so I'm just going to reinforce that glue with my Tombow Mono multi-glue here. And I really like this font. It's kind of a tall, skinny font, and it allows you to have a pretty long word. Like darling's a pretty long word compared to hello anyways, and it doesn't take a whole lot of space because this font is pretty skinny. Now there are a few letters that are a little bit odd shaped or sized, I guess, in comparison to other one. Like the R was extremely tall compared to the A, so I just trimmed it down a little bit. The great thing about using thickers are typically you can alter them if you like. Some of them are a little bit more difficult to alter, but most of them are pretty easy to alter. Now, if you notice at the beginning, whenever I trimmed out that 4x6 card that I actually matted my photo on originally, I left about a 1-inch border at the bottom under the photo, and that just allows me a place for my title to be anchored without it covering up any of my photo. And even though I have about 1 inch by about 1.5 inches on the left side of my title, I can use that either to add another cluster, another embellishment cluster right there, or I can just leave it open. Because it's not just the blank white space, it doesn't look awkward. It does have the colored paper underneath. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, as part of my design tips, I highly suggest having a space for you to be able to allow your recipient to put some hidden journaling. And so I am using one of the tags from this Hello Darling collection by We Are Memory Keepers, and I'm making a pocket right up here to the side on the top right for the journaling to be. Now, I like to put a little notch just so it shows that there is something there. But it's not so large that it looks awkward if they decide not to do any journaling. So I'm just creating my little pocket, and I just like to use scrap paper and reinforce it with some washi along the sides. It's a very easy way to have journaling hidden right there. Excuse me. And whenever I make these for my sisters, I am actually going to be buying them an album, and they'll be top loading pages, so there's not going to be any issue with these journaling spots not being able to be pulled out. Now, I felt like the layout, because I just used a white cardstock as a background, I felt like it needed a little bit of something, so I'm using some of my little homemade enamel dots that I made with some perler beads to add something to it, and these are just in the dark gray. Now, I love my little enamel dots, and in a recent haul, I actually mentioned that I bought some mini ones. I haven't tried them yet, but I'm really excited to do it. It just takes a little bit of time, so I haven't had the time invested yet to do that, but I can't wait. Whenever I actually get those made, I should have multiple sizes that I'll be able to use in my homemade enamel dots. They're a lot more affordable than buying, 50 little packages of enamel dots, because I use them all the time. Just layering a few more small little bits here. I'm using this thin silver washi tape, and then I cut out a little piece of one of the tags that said I love you. And then I'm going to be layering this little gray ticket up here at the top as well. Now this pretty much finishes the layout. Stay tuned, because I'm going to have a recap here for you in just a moment. Thank you for watching, and I really appreciate all the support that you guys give. Alright, so we have our finished layout here. To recap the tips that I provided at the beginning of the video, the topic, of course, was scrapbooking for others, and I had a couple tips. First was to pre-plan your photos, and you can get photos from Facebook, from relatives or friends, of course the photos that you have, or ask the recipient what it was that they want in their album. Unless it's a gift, then of course you don't want to ask them. Second, set your title as you print your photos, and I had this title set when I pulled out this photo and pulled out some of the embellishments, and it's Hello Darling, because I was using the We Are Memory Keepers Hello Darling die cut pack, so that's what actually helped me choose the title here. And that was when I pulled out the photo and paired it with some supplies. 3, keep the recipient's taste in mind when embellishing. 4, journaling. Leave space to journal that is hidden in case the recipient doesn't end up journaling. And then 5, have fun and don't overcomplicate it. So I wanted to take a look at the layout that I did. Now this layout is relatively simple, especially for my taste. I typically use a pattern paper as a background. In doing these layouts for my sisters, I have 2 sisters, and I've been doing layouts for both of them. In doing layouts for both of them, I have tried to keep the backgrounds simple. Now, of course, they're not all that way, especially if you go back and look at the different videos that I've done. They're not all simple backgrounds, but this, excuse me, excuse me. But this one in particular is a simple background. It is using just a white plain cardstock in the back. I'm not incredibly certain what the style of my sisters, what scrapbook style my sisters have, because I've never scrapbooked with them. I've done some card making with them, and both of them are relatively clean card makers. They don't really do mixed media or anything like that that I've ever seen. So I kept the background, or kept the layouts, relatively simple. And then the journaling, the hidden journaling, of course I use my little tag up here in the corner to be able to do the journaling. Now, if she doesn't want to journal, that's totally fine. I made sure it was the same color so it doesn't look strange sticking out right here at the top. And there you go. So those are all of my tips for you guys. Please let me know if you have any questions, or if you have tips that you'd like to add. I would love to hear what you have to, or what you think, or what you've experienced in creating layouts for others. Hit that like button if you like this video, and also subscribe if you'd like to see the other videos that I post on a regular basis. Alright, thank you guys. Bye!